All right, got it. Streaming. Why am I not seeing the? Oh, there it is.
I got it. Streaming.
Phew! Hello, everybody. Take it away, Sarah.
This is called Zoom. We press the buttons. Just kidding. Happy New Year, you guys. Thank you, Evie. I was just telling, is somebody talking? Am I? You can hear me, right? Okay. I was like, wait a minute. Am I talking to myself? So I was just telling Ashley that it's that weird thing where it's like, wait, it's January 11th. Oh, it's 1-1-1-2-3. Robert, tell us what that means. I will stay on time because today is Broker Bob's broker updates. And y'all, we have not had a team meeting since before the holidays. So happy holidays. Yeah, cute glasses. Thanks, Andrea. They are because my eyeballs don't like to see anymore because I'm 47. So anyway, let's get to it and start with our welcomes, friends. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you back to our team meetings. Yay. Can't wait to see you next time. Andrea, I don't know. And then we have a lot of agents to welcome because it's been a minute. So Christine, made my thing go away, Evie. Christine, welcome to Metro. Amy Meadows, we're happy to have you join us. Oh, you're on. I love when people are on.
Yeah.
Seth Bradley, welcome to the fam. Jesus Martinez, we're excited to meet you. Mario Barajas, welcome aboard. Jillian Vasecki.
Hi.
Hi, Jillian. John Valas, Kristen Pennell, and Oscar Castillas have all joined Metro. Jill's dialed in too. Way to go, Jill. Alicia says, Coach Alicia says you're on it. And then for signature, we have Sean Kravitz, who's coming over from Big Block, and Mark Casada, who's also moved over to us from the Big Block here in San Diego. And Christine, I don't know if Christine's on today. Christine joined us too. So Christine, we know you joined us, but sometimes with the way the deadlines work, you're going to see your face next week and not today. So if that's the case for anybody else on the screen, we know you're here. We're happy about it. And you'll see your face next week. All right. But oh, see you are, Christine. Hi, Christine Connolly. Bucket fills. Who wants to fill a bucket to start the year? Anybody? I could do a dance. It could be exciting.
This is Dan. I'm happy to do one.
Sorry. Dan, you go.
Go, Dan Becker.
All right, thanks. I want to shout out Amanda and her team for coming in at the last minute and helping one of my clients get a loan done so that he could close on January 3rd. So they did a great job. Movement Mortgage is always my go-to. They're so great for all of us. So there you go.
Thanks, Dan, and happy New Year, new you. Getting that closing in on January 3rd. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Team Movement. Thanks, y'all, for being awesome.
Congrats, Dan. That's
Yeah.
so awesome. I was just wanting to give a shout out to Anthony. I talked to him today. We reconnected, and he's just such a wonderful person, and I'm excited to work with him again. One of my friends, unfortunately, is going through a divorce, so I asked him if he, has the resources to help, and he does, and I wasn't sure. So, I just feel like I can ask him anything to do with finances, and he's my go-to guy.
Whoever you go to in our crowd, thanks for that shout out, Andrea. Whoever you go to in our crowd of movement heroes is going to have an answer for you, and they're all going to be able to help you. And that's why we work with them. So if they weren't awesome, they wouldn't be here. Right, guys and gal? Okay. And I promised Broker Bob I would stay on time today. So if y'all want to start shouting people out in the chat, go ahead. Because like I said, I know it's been a minute. And I'm going to give one royal shout out to Evie because we threw the entire 2023 calendar at her and said, can we get it all planned out for the whole year ahead? So by the end of January, we have the whole thing shared with the agents. And y'all, that's what's happening. So you will have not only your months at a glance, month is not a word, but you'll have the whole year to project out. And Alicia wants to shout out everyone who sends her chicken videos. So on that note, I will move along to the often talked about on text and Facebook and email, exciting door updates. MJ, are you here to give us the door update? Okay, I will give the door update. The email or Facebook has come to you and told you that we have a new locking system at the Metro office. Signature agents, don't worry, this does not affect you unless you're accessing the Metro building. But at Metro, the old source that we use to access the app with NextKey, they no longer do the business. So we're only changing it rapidly, y'all, because they no longer are in business and we're afraid of some sort of system failure. So we are going to move on to SwiftLane. You have an email, you have a post on Facebook. If you don't know what I'm talking about or you haven't seen anything like that, holler kindly to MJ or to me or to somebody and say, hey, where's that email? Can someone forward it to me? To be honest, I thought it was spam when I got it. And it was only like the fourth one that came through that I was like, is this something legitimate? So it says, if you search SwiftLane, one word in your email, you will find it. I think Jacqueline's writing in the chat right now. There it is. And with that, we will move on to upcoming trainings and events. Evie?
Yes, ma'am, for this. But I do also want to do a quick shout out to everyone that attended our holiday party. It was a huge success. It was packed. So hopefully all of our social events coming up in the 2023 will be like that. So
have we not had a meeting
very
since
much.
the party?
No, we have not. And I do. Speaking of that, just a huge shout out to our 2 winners of the ugly sweater for Tinu and Monty Bowman. I have your gift cards, as well as the Smarillo kids for the kiddos, ugly sweaters. I've got them here. I will put them in your mailboxes. Sorry, we didn't get an announcement since we didn't have a meeting anymore after the holiday party. So congratulations, everybody, and Happy New Year. For this week, we are back on Language of Real Estate with SJ Hybrid every Thursday. So we're kicking that off tomorrow, Thursday at 8:30, following with Nick, our director of tech. He is going over on how to run a successful ad campaign via Zoom. I posted the Zoom link on that one. I will repost that again. And I'm also adding that in both the intranet calendar. There's going to be a printout calendar. There's also the Facebook event page. So lots of sources to get them. So if you have any questions, you can also shoot me an email. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Language of Real Estate is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, guys. And there were 44 people on it when I popped on yesterday. So get in there and hear the conversations. It's the hybrid that's Thursday. So just want to clarify that for anyone's ears, for their earballs. And I was going to say one more thing before I throw to BB. Oh, and next week is Ashley's in-person market stats. So there is a potluck before, right?
Yes, we will do a New Year's potluck right at 12:30. So come join us. Let's kick it off. And we look forward to seeing you all.
So, oh, right, because we're not throwing to BB now. It's just BB for the updates. Okay. See, I've done this before. I'm going to get right back in the swing of it. Robert, would you like to give us launch and coaching updates?
Hey, yes, thank you very much, Sarah. Happy Wednesday, Metro and Signature. Let's give some shout outs to some agents doing some notable things in 2023. Congratulations go out on Team Alicia. Edward Rodriguez closed his first escrow and launch. Great job, Edward. Then Dora opened up an escrow on her own listing. She's also in launch. And then Mike Link opened up an escrow on his own listing and launch. And then Eric Gonzalez officially joined Team Alicia in the launch program. All right, back to you, Sarah. And I will be back in a few minutes with this wonderful risk management update.
We can't wait. We can't wait for the new year risk management updates, Robert. All right. Speaking of all the movement, fabulous humans, who would like to talk today?
What's up, everybody? I guess it's me. I don't see Wes on here, but I might be missing them. Anyways, just want to give you guys a quick update. Rates have kind of been creeping up, y'all. We're back into like the mid to high sixes if we're looking at conventional loans, but government loans are still like in the high fives and low sixes. So I've had a lot of luck in switching people over that are kind of borderline from conventional if they don't have a whole heck of a lot of money to switching them to FHA and getting approvals for them, but it does kind of limit them as to what they can look for, especially if they're in condos. But just a heads up, so they have creeped up. So be mindful if you have someone that was approved a couple months ago that, you know, hasn't circled back with their loan officer. Also want to let you guys know this week, Movement Monday, we're going to be doing a Mortgage 101 for everybody, and we will record it for all of our newbies that you guys haven't attended yet. Everybody that has attended wants a refresher. We're going to be going over some of the new laws that are in place and updating you on some parameters and guidelines that have changed recently. So 9 o'clock on Zoom, and we'll put out an email and post it on FaceSpace for everyone. And then the following week, where I don't know if it's the following week or the week after, but we're going to be doing another HomeBot iteration of Movement Mondays. And so we'll be bringing in somebody from HomeBot to kind of go over that, because there's been a lot of chatter and people signing up for it and stuff like that. So I want to make sure you guys are familiar with all the ins and outs of the software. It's a really cool piece of software that we all have access to. So if anyone has any questions about it, don't hesitate to hit any of us up, because we all have it. Cool. That's it. Really short and sweet. I know Bob needs his time.
Short, sweet, and value packed, Eddie. You know, that's what I like about it. Thanks for all the goodness.
Yeah.
I have a minute for property pitches, y'all. Anybody have something they want to share coming soon or newly listed, since our last meeting was apparently before December 19th? Going once. Going twice. No one has a listing. No one's selling real estate. Then we should all stop the meeting and everyone should go to work right now. Go find some business, churn it up. Okay, I'm going to pitch my properties then. There's a place called Anaheim. It's just about an hour and 20 minutes north of us. And February 17th, 18th, 19th, there's the 40th birthday celebration of Keller Williams is happening there, you guys. It could be anywhere in the country. We could have to fly to Orlando. We could be in Vegas. We could be in New Orleans. We're not in any of those places. No, we're in Southern California. This is as close to home as it will ever be. So if you are not registered yet, go to Family Reunion. If you don't know what to expect, that's okay. We will help you. We will guide you. We will show you the way. The tickets online are full price. There's a little group on Facebook called Family Reunion something or other, where people are selling their tickets they already purchased. And sometimes they're at a discount. Go figure it out, get there, be there. It's freaking awesome. I can't explain it in words. It's just, like I said in Dirty Dancing, it's a feeling, a heartbeat. It's never going to be closer. Do that. Okay. And I'm going to say it again next week in person. I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's that important. Without further ado, BB, I'm going to hand it to you early because that's how much I love you.
Thank you, Sarah. I love you back just even more. Happy January, KW Metro and Signature. New year, 2023. Great things in store. I know this is going to be a great year in the real estate business. It might not seem like it since the last 6 months we went through, but I am very optimistic about where we'll be this year. And you all are part of that. Just as a friendly reminder, I'm your managing broker of KW Metro and KW Signature. What does that mean? And I think it's important I start the year with the wonderful 62 other people on this call that showed up. And it means a lot that you show up to this meeting, because it's my responsibility, according to the Department of Real Estate, to monitor, train, and educate you so you guys all stay within the letter of the law, protect your clients at all costs, and do the right thing. And this is how I help you each and every month, is presenting this. And I attempt to bring, information that is timely, relevant, you need to know. And you know that because then you come to these meetings, and then it's not something I didn't know that when you are doing something you shouldn't be doing, or something changed. And there's a lot of changes in the forms this January. It started in December, but we're going to cover the changes in the forms and a few other things on today's call. So I want to welcome everybody to the first meeting. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can start with the agenda. And let me get my everything situated. I'm going to start my slideshow. All right, what are we going to cover? Well, I'm going to review the Department of Real Estate Fall Newsletter, which came out, and it's important. There's one important thing in there you need to know. We're going to talk about the RPA that was updated last year. They did some updates in December and give you access to some training on that. And then some new forms that have come out that you'll need to know about. And zip form transaction templates. We'll discuss that. And of course, the correspondence log creation is always going to be in this PowerPoint, because we want to make sure you guys are all creating a correspondence log for every transaction you have. All right, without further ado, I do this on every risk management call. What is the number one thing a buyer or seller will say to me as your broker if they want to sue you and the brokerage?
You never told me that.
Exactly. Your agent never told me that. That's why the communication log is important, because if you did tell them and they're saying you didn't, you memorialize all your conversations you have with, that is a material issue, something that's really important. Like if there's a foundation issue that they need to get an inspection on and they refuse to do it, you document that in an email. On such and such date, we had the conversation about the necessity to do a foundation inspection, and you have opted not to move forward with that inspection. Then they can't come back and sue you. Well, they could, but it'll be harder for them because you have now done your fiduciary duty and told them what they should be doing, and they refuse to do it. So that's an example of what would be in a communication log. All right, so here's what's happening with the, I guess this is the identity theft that is with the Department of Real Estate. And for the rest of the agenda, I'm going to go off of this this Google sheet, which has all been sent out with all of the information and all the links that you'll need. So Evie was kind enough to send that out on Facebook via email, and it should be in there. And if you have troubles looking for it, search for risk management in your email. All right, what's the important stuff? Let me get to the page that was important that I wanted to share with you. It's the licensees are urged to protect themselves from identity theft scam that's going on right now. And this pops up all the time. And they've had a number of complaints at the DRE. So here's what scammers will do is they'll take a licensee's personal or business name along with information from current for sale listings, and then post those homes on other websites like For Rent or Craigslist. And there's also instances where scammers use homes that were previously posted online as for rent and make it look as if the property is again for rent. So if you're a listing agent, you have a listing, you should be perusing sites like Craigslist or rental websites to see if it's out there, or actually the easiest way is to go to Google, put in your address and say for rent and see if anything pops up through the search engines. So especially in this competitive rental market that we're experiencing right now with limited inventory for renters and why everything's going up. So, but basically what these people do is they'll go ahead, they'll steal Bridget Potterton's listing that she's had. They'll put up a fake ad on Craigslist using Bridget Potterton's face because and information, et cetera, except for a phone number. And because with the speed of how quickly people need to rent places, the way they get these scammers get people is they make people send in their deposit check without even first seeing the property. And then of course, renters are impatient, they need to get it done, they send in the money, and then the scammers have taken off, they're gone. So a lot of this, it's not really, these scammers aren't in California or San Diego. They're really coming from foreign countries like Russia and China. So, but be aware of that. So go through and make sure that you are not being scammed and your name's not being used in a way it shouldn't be used with some of your stuff. All right, so Zip Forms or CAR did let me get this view. Hold on.
Hey, Robert, can I ask a quick question about the scamming?
Yes.
If we find that happening, how do we report it? What do we do?
call the DRE immediately to clear your name. Just call the Department of Real Estate, and I think they have a scammer hotline. Let me see if there's. No, it's not in this, but call the hotline or call the Department of Real Estate. And unfortunately, you got to sit online a little bit.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so CAR did an update with the RPA, and because we won't have time today, I wanted to let you know that CAR did a webinar, and you can have access to that webinar with that link that says CAR webinar to see changes. So in the documents that were sent to you, all you need to do is drop in, click on that link, and you can go watch a 1 hour pre-recorded version of all the changes in the RPA. We're going to cover a few of them today, but I won't be able to cover all of them. So, because there are some significant changes compared to what it was, what the version of 2022 was. And then of course, right there, I have the new form that you can look at as well too. So let me load that up. So just to understand, when you are working with the documents with zip forms, you want to make sure that the date for the residential purchase agreement says 12/22. If it says 12/21, then it's an older version. Okay, so be aware of that and making sure you're operating. Here's what happens, and Mark will explain this later when we start talking about templates. But basically, if you've created your own templates in your personal edition of zip forms, and you just go and copy a template, that template, if it doesn't have the new form in it, if it was the old form, it just brings in the old form. So you would need to go delete that form in that template and then re-add it, okay? And Mark will explain that a little bit more in detail, but here's the fundamental change that you need to know about, and you guys have probably seen it. Make sure you can all read that. 3G3. This is in relationship to a buyer-broker agreement, which has been changed, modified, updated, and that's what really we're going to cover today. But this is something that you'll see on this. I'm like, this is new. What is this? So if this box is checked, and listing agents pay attention to this, because if you're reviewing contracts, and our biggest fear as brokers, that when I just got off a call with all my area brokers, is that people will get into the habit of just autopilot and not really go through, and they didn't even know that this change was there. But this box, item 3G3, says the seller agrees to pay the obligation of buyer to compensate buyer brokers under a separate agreement. And that agreement we're going to review today. And if there is that separate agreement, then the form SPBB would need to be attached to the RPA to verify that the buyer will be paying, is responsible for a certain amount, yet we're still going to do the MLS. So just the easiest thing is, if you're a listing agent and you look at this and that box is checked and they have an SPBB, great. If they don't have the SPBB, then you need to request it. Okay, it needs to be in a counteroffer. And as an agent, if you are a buyer's agent and you're submitting an offer and you do have the new buyer broker agreement filled out, then you would check this box. But if you did not put together a buyer broker agreement, then don't check this box. Make a big note on the side of that, because you don't want, if you don't have that buyer broker agreement, then this item 3G3 does not apply. Any questions on that?
I do. I have a question.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So is that only when we have a VRE signed with a client and at the bottom of the page one, it says that we're being compensated a specific percentage or a specific dollar amount? and what that listing agent is offering does not meet that requirement that we have on the BRE.
I'm going to discuss that today. That's a great question, Alicia. And it's the new form. It's no longer the BRE. The BRE is gone. Now it's called the BRBC, the Buyer Representation and Broker Compensation Agreement. Okay, so hold that question, and when we get to that, we'll answer that. And did I hear someone else? Mark,
That was
did I hear
me.
you?
I was just going to say that generally is the correct scenario that Alicia said there where the compensation in the MLS is less than what the buyer representation agreement calls for.
Thank you, Mark. And then we discussed this in December of this year, the new forms, the form release quick summary. So there's a link for that. All right, so let's get into the forms. The new forms that we want to cover is the NCOA, the COBR, the MBIP, and the solar. And we'll get to the BRBC and the SPBB. Who's excited? Shout out, hands up, raise your hands. You're excited for 6 new forms to learn, 6 new acronyms. Alicia, she's the only one that's excited. Okay, so let's look at this non-contingent offer advisory. And as Mark says, it's required in buyer transactions. And here's why we want to require it. Okay, so when you have this form was the result of last year's real estate market where people were making offers on properties, sight unseen, waiving inspections, and removing some contingencies that weren't in place. And as brokers, we were really concerned that it would open up a Pandora's box once the market cooled a little bit, and the market's cooled, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that nothing happens. But buyers that got into properties that did not do an inspection, did not do the stuff that they needed to do. They didn't inspect the property, and then they find out that all of a sudden there's a foundation is cracking or there's a leak someplace, and now they're coming back and wanting to sue the seller and sue the brokers. And typically they're suing the brokers because the brokers have the deep pocket. The non-contingent offers were done to make the offers look more attractive to the buyer, the seller, okay? And while making that offer look attractive, it puts the buyer at risk. So if you have come and mute yourself if you're talking, please. If you have an offer in the transaction and it's automatically included, needs to be included, but especially if you have a buyer that wants to make a non-contingent offer for waiving inspection, appraisal, loan, etc., then you need to recommend to them that this is against broker advice. We highly recommend you do that. We're doing this though, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, because you are wanting to make your offer look more attractive because it's a multi-bid situation. It's a competitive property, and you know you're competing against 2 or 3 other people. And you need to review this. And then once you review this, then you also need to follow up in an email. Please note in your documentation when you sign the purchase agreement, I put a form called a non-contingent offer advisory. And I just wanted to make sure you read through that because that basically explains that we recommend prior to writing an offer, you review all the reports, disclosure information, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That's where you memorialize the conversation. And then they can't come back to me and say, well, your agent never told me that. Yes, we did. Here's the proof. Okay. Any questions on the non-contingent offer advisory? All right. So it is in the templates, and we'll talk about the templates in a few minutes. Just make note of that.
That NCOA should be delivered with the purchase agreement, just like you deliver our affiliated business arrangement disclosure and also like the market conditions advisory. That NCOA form needs to be done at the time the offer is being made.
Thank you, Mark. And of course, I just lost all my stuff. Hold on. Patience, please.
So while you're looking for that, I'll just confirm, even if you're putting an offer that's not removing any contingencies, that form will still be standard for our office.
Correct.
Thank you.
Susan, you beat me to it.
You have, it's at the tab right there at the top, Robert, right next to the one you were just on. And the Google Drive, the Google Drive. So one to the right of that. No, one to the left. There you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna open up this way. Next new form. And I'm glad they finally put out this form, but it's called the cancellation of buyer representation. Previously, if you had a buyer broker agreement and we wanted to let the person wanted out of the buyer broker agreement and you no longer wanted to work with them, we really didn't have a form to do that. Well, this form will actually take the place of me writing up an addendum or something like that. In the notice of cancellation, the representation may be canceled by either buyer or broker or both by signing in the applicable box below, delivering to the other party. And we're going to get in later, how do you cancel a buyer broker, the new buyer broker agreement form. But basically, item 2A, if you check the box that the buyer or the broker hereby gives notice to the other to cancel the buyer representation and terminate their agency relationship, and then the effective date of the cancellation. But item 2B1, where it says the written buyer representation agreement, you'll see a blank box there that says days after receipt of this notice. That's there to protect you if you have shown them some properties and they're responsible to pay you a commission. And if there is a written agreement, regardless of the agreement, then the parties agree to cancel the buyer representation immediately, or you can choose an amount of days in item 3B3 as to when you want to cancel the contract. And then, of course, and then item 2C is what are the properties that they are subject to the buyer representation where they're responsible for paying a commission if they do purchase a property. And then item D spells it out. Broker will not be the buyer's agent during any negotiation or transaction that results between the buyer and seller regarding any property. And it goes into a few compensation issues and then the standard signature line. If you had some expenses occur that they owe you, that you agreed to in advance. A few other things that I don't think I want to go through for lack of time, but just know that this form is there. And if and when you need to fill it out, we will help you do that. Anything else, Mark, on that?
Were you, there was just one line for the list of properties. So do you just write like see attached and put like an addendum with the list?
Yeah, you could use an addendum in that situation if that field didn't create a text overflow addendum automatically for you.
Thank you.
There's
it's the next form.
Yep.
It's this form right here that will be attached to it. It's the notice of broker involved properties. So this will be where if you had the broker, the buyer broker arrangement put in place and you're terminating the relationships, and you need to identify the properties that they would be responsible to pay you a commission on because you showed them. And we're going to talk about what broker involvement is when we go over the buyer broker agreement. But you would put it on this form, which is the notice of broker involved properties in BIP. Okay. The next form that CAR has come out with, and I'm glad they finally did, because what this form will do will help mitigate a lot of escrow issues with homes that have solar. And if I have Nicole, the escrow officer on the call, she'll understand this because she's dealt with solar related issues through escrow that can be pretty sticky. And basically what this form is, and so a listing agent, listen up to this. this form will be in the templates, but you should get this form filled out at the time you take the listing if the home has solar. If the home has solar. Why? Because if you are an agent representing a property with solar on the home, you need to be able to convey in the MLS and to any potential buyers, what are the terms of this solar? Is it owned or leased? Can they pay, does the seller have to pay off, or does the buyer have to assume it? Is it a PACE loan or a HERO loan, which is a whole nother can of worms? And so it mitigates the challenge through escrow, where the seller will fill out the information on the property. And then when you start marketing the property, you'll be able to answer the questions like, how old is the solar system? And maybe some experts here on the phone can answer that question. Isn't it like at 20 years, it has to be replaced, the panels? Does anybody know? Okay, no one knows. I don't know either, but I think it is. Like 20 years is their shelf life. What was the name of the installation company? Does the solar system provide power only for a portion of the property? Approximate size of the system, the number of panels, the kilowatt size, whether the system is central inverter or micro inverters, and whether the system is on-grid only or on and off-grid or off-grid only, and whether there's a battery bank or power wall that enables the system to run off-grid, and whether any portion of the system is installed anywhere other than the roof. And then the next part would be if it was an owned solar system, if applicable, when the seller is going to convey the property. In other words, they bought the solar system. Well, if they bought it, did they have it financed, or is it paid off in cash? If it's not paid off, what is the balance? Is it secured by interest on title? And then is the loan transferable or assumable by buyer? And if it's not secured on title, then the agreement may have to be amended for buyer to be responsible for the balance. Do you see why homes with solar became a big issue? Because all these questions weren't answered prior to going into contract. And then it became kind of a cluster through some of these escrows. And
Robert, I'm sorry, yes. Is this a form we would put into the actual listing itself so that everybody, all the buyer's agents have access to it?
So, Mark?
You could have this completed by the seller and lodge it as a document in the MLS or upload it, as part of the listing.
Okay, thanks.
So it will be in your templates.
Yep.
But my recommendation as your broker is to have this signed and filled out by your seller at the time you take the listing, preferably, or as soon as possible, before you put it in the MLS, so you know exactly what you're marketing. And I can't express that enough to say you have to know the terms of the solar. How do you guys know if there's solar on a property? Well, you drive up to the house and you see on the roof, there's these panels. And they're kind of odd shaped panels and they're facing towards the sun. And
yeah, you cannot always see the roof.
I'm kidding. But you ask the seller. That should be part of your pre-listing questionnaire, your seller questionnaire before you even go and see the property. By the way, do you have solar? Great. I need to bring my solar information so I can have you fill that out. Okay.
And as a reminder, we have an SMP partner who works with solar who will be happy to help us with some of this.
Oh, great. Who's that SMP?
I can't think of his name right now, but it'll come to me shortly.
Okay,
he was
great.
at the honey party.
It's Matthew. He will actually be here doing a little lunch and learn next week. So I will post his information.
Perfect. Dan, do you have CRS too?
What do you mean by CRS?
Can't remember shit.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, I have a really bad case. All right. Sorry, guys. Your broker cussed. It's like a sailor today. All right. Hopefully no one is offended. And if you were offended, I apologize. All right, so let's now get into the new form, that you're all excited about, which we as brokers aren't excited about, because really this is only going to take effect probably 3% of the time. Our office is pretty good at getting buyer broker agreements signed. But if you don't have one, if you do have one, no, you got to put in item 3G3 in the contract. You got to check that box and put in the SPBB. Okay, so basically, and Mark, you interject anytime. Mark and I both took the webinar and we both took notes.
Well, let's just go section by section here. And, like in section 1, one of the biggest changes you're going to see is that you have a beginning date, and then the ending date is in days. So the intent of the redesign of this form was to make it more friendly to buyers, so buyers are not intimidated by it. Oh, I don't want to sign an agreement for years, or 6 months or whatever. This gives you as the agent the ability to say, well, let's just do it for a week or 2 weeks, and then we can extend it if you want. So a lot of these changes we're going to talk about were made to make this form more buyer friendly.
Mark, how would you extend the days? Let's say you only took it for 7 days. How would you extend it to 30?
Remember that, this is an agreement between the brokerage and a client. And so you would use a modification of terms to make a change to the buyer representation agreement, just like you would use a modification of terms for a listing agreement.
And that's a form called MT, modification of terms and zip forms.
Right.
Okay.
So here's another significant point. Number 2, you ask the buyer, hey, have you signed one of these forms or something like it with any other agents? Because that's really important to know in terms of whether, the buyer is going to owe compensation to another agent in addition to yourself.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to go back to.
Hey, if I may, sorry, I don't know where my hand raise is. It's Deb Brown. So oftentimes we all forget to extend on things like that. And on this BRE, this would be as they're saying, the BRBS. Is that okay? Sorry.
BRBC.
Right, BRBC. So my question is, this would probably be one date we would probably forget on all the dates that we need to keep track of. This might be one that we might forget. I don't know how to pose the question, but I know that will happen. So how serious is that? Or
you're just not covered. If they go out and buy something else behind your back, you're not covered.
Sure. Okay.
Unless it's a property you were involved in.
And if it expired and you didn't know it, you would have lost your opportunity to deliver that broker involved properties list, which would also preclude you from getting any compensation on any of those. So it's important to mark that date down on your calendar that it's going to expire on a certain date, and so that you have a tickler and you can extend it with the buyer if you're still working with them actively.
Yeah, I just really appreciate the shortened time frame. I think that's pretty positive. But in the end, I think it'd be a pain in the you-know-what. But I guess that'll remain to be seen. I just thought I would voice my opinion.
Let me explain the concept, because as an industry, it's only used about 3% of the time. Why they wanted to change this form. And by the way, these forms are not legally required, and they're not required by our office that you use them, but we highly recommend you use the BRBC if you want to protect your commission when working with a buyer. Their logic in changing this was to make it easier and friendlier for the buyer. What's the number one complaint you get from the buyer when you try to get a BRE is well, I don't know if I want you to be my exclusive. I want to go out and deal with other people. This little section in item number 1, you're going to see this, it says non-exclusive right. What this has done is it's taken away instead of an exclusive, this form is non-exclusive. In other words, you're only going to get paid on the properties that you have broker involvement in. So wouldn't it make sense, Mr. Buyer, if I take you out this weekend and I show you 5 homes, would you agree that you'd want me to be paid on those homes? Because that's my time, energy, and effort to take you out there. Yeah, great. So then you can do a BRBC for the weekend. And you log all the homes that you showed them. And if they decide to purchase one of them, then you are guaranteed you'll get your commission that you've earned from them because you have an agreement in advance. It was done to make the arrangement between the buyer and the agent a little bit more friendlier, and that the buyer could get out at any time. By the way, the buyer can cancel this agreement if it's non-exclusive. And if it's non-exclusive, it's immediately eliminated. But if it was deemed exclusive, where you'll see where we'll write that down, then it takes 30 days. Is that right, Mark?
I believe that's correct. Yeah, they have to give 30 days notice.
Yeah.
You can see that it says that with that part that he's highlighted there, it says that it defaults to non-exclusive unless paragraph 4B2 is checked, making it exclusive, which we can now see at the bottom of the screen. So you have an option. You have an option to have it be non-exclusive or exclusive.
So if you want to make it exclusive, as Mark says, you check 4B2, and now it's exclusive. But you're probably going to have an easier time getting it signed if it be non-exclusive. Okay. And then item 3, the property to be acquired. On this one,
if you wanted to, be generic and specific at the same time, you don't want to be overly broad when you're filling out 3A. Location, state of California. That's overly broad. Probably your buyer's not going to look everywhere in the state, but you say San Diego County and Imperial County or Riverside County, that's pretty, definitive. And they might be, you might have a buyer that didn't find anything in one county, but decided, okay, well, let's look in Riverside. So try and define it that way. You can even do specific cities or counties. Price range, we're going to always recommend that you just put in to be determined in price range. Don't put in $1 to $1 million because that's not realistic either. When you do things like that, it kind of makes this document less enforceable because the terms are somewhat unreasonable or unrealistic. So, what I would suggest in terms of price range is if you have someone pre-qualified at 500, maybe say 400 to 600 for the range, or you can just put in to be determined. And that's even safer because in that example I just gave, if the buyer bought something, you wrote 400 to 600 and they bought something at 399, would that invalidate the buyer representation agreement? Maybe, maybe not. But if you put in to be determined, it's there's nothing to be in question about.
and then 3B is you could just do a specific property, or 3C if you have a list of properties that you want to have the buyer broker prevail over. Okay, and then item 4 comes into the compensation, and this is where it's going to get, we're going to get some questions on this. So in this agreement, it shows you what is the compensation you're willing to accept. My standard is 3%, or 2.5 seems to be the norm. But are you guys, and I just got off the call with a bunch of brokers, they're seeing a lot of 1%, 0.5%, 2% in San Diego and the MLS with buyer broker compensation. Are you seeing that? So my recommendation, and this is what paralegal Neil Kalin said, is figure out what your standard rate is. And so in 4A, you'll put 3% of the purchase price. And in the conversation with your buyer, let's say then you go out and find a property that they're only offering 2% or 2.5 or 2.25. let them know that you'll accept the prevailing rate that the seller is willing to pay per the MLS. And so they won't be held to the difference. So in other words, if you had 3% in there and you went them and found them a home, but the seller's only paying 2%, well, that's a whole 1% deficit that the buyer would be responsible to pay. And this is something that upfront, just let them know, I'm only going to accept the prevailing rate. I'm not going to charge you any more money. Okay.
Okay, what question on that though? So is there anywhere, any place we can specify that? Because if it's in writing, you know what I'm saying?
I would, you're not going to put it on this form, but you can send them an email. You think, Mark, that'd be okay just to send them an email?
To discuss the amount that would go into 3A1, is that what you're asking, Doug?
No, not to discuss the amount for A1, not
Oh, sorry,
discuss
4A1. Yeah.
But the amount of commission that the agent's willing to accept if the CBB is less than what you put in this area right here.
I think this is addressed in the body of this document somewhere, but I'm not seeing it right now.
It's not.
I recall from the webinar, they said that, you know, that the agent would accept the cooperating broker commission listed in the MLS, and it would apply towards the amount in 3 or 4A1. And then this is where that other form and the RPA 3G3 comes into play, where if the cooperating broker compensation in the MLS is less than what's in the BRE, a request can be made to the seller to pay the difference. So
Yeah,
that's how that's go ahead.
I think I'm getting it confused because we talked about this at risk management meeting. You weren't at that one.
No.
But Dan Hill, my counterpart at La Mesa, says this is how he's handling it there, is just go ahead and tell them, I'm going to accept the prevailing rate that is offered with the cooperating broker compensation per the MLS.
Robert, can I say something?
Yes.
Number 11 in this form, clause 11, is a place where it says other terms. And what I would do is I would just write in that statement you said the broker will accept whatever you said about that. I have a statement I say also, but this is where I would put it in this particular form.
I asked that same question. I said, what would prevent an agent from not writing in, I'm willing to accept what the cooperating broker compensation is in the MLS? Let me go through my notes. Because Mark, they did answer that question. Mark, do you understand how to explain that one?
Yeah, I'm trying to search the document now to find that information.
All right, so hold that question, Peggy. We'll get to that towards the end. We'll have that answer towards the end as to why not. Okay. Item 4B 1 describes what broker involvement means for non-exclusive representation and how the compensation is payable only if there was a broker involved with the property. What is broker involvement? It means any of the following. Buyer physically entered and was shown the property by the broker. Broker showed the property to buyer virtually. Broker submitted to seller a signed written offer from buyer to acquire, lease, exchange, or obtain an option on the property. Or the property was introduced to the buyer by the broker, or one for which broker acted on buyer's behalf. However, merely sending a buyer a list of properties shall not be deemed broker involvement without documented action on the part of the broker analyzing the property for the buyer specifically, or assisting buyer in the potential acquisition of the property, or communicating with seller or seller's agent regarding buyer's potential acquisition of the property. So that's basically your job description in a non-exclusive. This is how you were introduced. So basically, you're introducing the property either physically you wrote an offer, you showed them the property, even virtually, or you introduced it to them somehow.
So here's one for you. I show them the property in the beginning and they end up writing an offer with somebody else. What happens in that situation?
After your BRBC has expired or was canceled?
Let's say yes.
Okay, well, let's take expired. So prior to the time that it expired, you would provide that list of notice of the broker involved properties document prior to expiration. I think it's 5 days.
Document right here.
I believe it's 5 days prior to expiration. And if you don't do that, then you basically have lost out on everything that you showed, that buyer, because they don't have any obligation, because you never told them, you never gave them the notice of the properties that you did show them.
Okay.
And then if it was canceled, that list would have to be presented prior to cancellation.
So it's not 5 days prior, Mark, it's 5 days after receiving notice of cancellation.
Oh, okay.
So they have 5 days after, okay?
And for
Question?
how much time after cancellation are they still on the hook for paying commission on these properties on the NBIP?
I believe there is a field here, a notice period, and it's in 4C1, where you can define the period, the notice period. I mean,
Right here.
Is that right,
What if
Robert?
you never had an agreement with them?
If you had no buyer broker or buyer representation agreement, then you would definitely not be
What broker Bob says SOL.
Yeah, eligible.
I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and say, Broker Bob, my client went behind my back and bought something else from somebody else. What do I do? Well, did you have a buyer broker? No. Then you're SOL. Unless you can show recurring costs. And that could be a case too, but that's, again, 15 different points to follow to get recurring costs.
Okay, thank you.
Here it's a section E where it defines how many calendar days after expiration that, similar to a listing agreement that you guys fill out, is how many days after does this agreement protect me so that I can get paid. And you can put in that 60 calendar days, 30 calendar days, whatever. So I see we've reached the end of the hour. Let me just make sure we cover everything. Let's get down to the Metro templates. And Mark, can you explain what's going on with the templates and what people should do?
Right. Okay. As you know, when we migrated from ZipForm Broker Edition to your ZipForm Personal Editions, we created a set of templates that you could import into your Personal Edition so that they would preload a lot of the forms that were commonly used in new transactions. So currently, I think I know there's a problem with ZipForm where the templates are not working or they can't be imported. And maybe an open question for everybody. I mean, if you imported the templates and you'd been using them, when you're creating new transactions now, are the templates gone or are they still there?
That was a question, you guys.
Question to anybody that can answer it.
Victor said they're still there.
Okay.
I had somebody write an offer yesterday where it seemed as though half of them are there, not the our ABAD or any of the PDFs, but the card forms are there.
Okay, you do have to apply the template. They don't automatically apply.
Yeah, the template was there, but not all the forms are the templates.
Not all the forms. Okay, so there is some technical issue with ZipForm right now, and I don't know if it's because of the legacy form editor and this new one that they have created. You know, when you go in, you can pick which old version or new version of the editor you want to use. But we're working on that. I've got a trouble ticket in with them, and we're going to be releasing new templates soon. And basically, we revised them because we had some feedback that they were too clumsy, too cluttered with too many things. So we've really put fewer forms into each template, and there's actually fewer templates available. But they're coming, and we just haven't been able to roll them out because of, if we rolled them out, you wouldn't be able to install them. So that's where we're at with that right now. And we're waiting on Lone Wolf to resolve the issue.
So here's your workaround in this PDF that you got. If you're with Metro or Signature, Mark has been so kind to create what's called transaction opening documents. And if you need to create a buyer template, here's the forms you need to bring in. And if you need to create a listing template, here's the forms you need to bring in. So you can, on the fly, create your own templates. All right, we covered a lot today. We can go for another hour with the buyer broker thing. I highly recommend you go back and listen to the RPA webinar that I put in as a link, and listen to that, because you need to know the fundamental changes that were made in the RPA, and just don't overlook it and think, oh, I'll just wing it, because it could land you and your principal in hot water.
There is also a replay available of the buyer representation agreement webinar that Carr put on yesterday. And if you're in there looking at the webinars in that legal live section, you can see the replay there. And if you want to watch that one, it's only an hour long. So it might, if you're using buyer representation agreements, I would suggest watching that.
I have one last question. I know you got to go, but are the templates for new agents? I know the older agents that had a transfer, that's a thing, but all the new agents, do they have all of their forms auto-populated?
No, because when you try to import the templates into Personal Edition right now, it currently does not work. It says no templates found. So your best alternate solution is to manually add the templates with that opening documents form that we just showed.
Thank you. Sorry.
Now that I can see my full Zoom screen, I'm going through some of the comments, and there's two I want to point out. Bridget put, I'm offended by all these new forms. I agree with you, Bridget. So am I.
Welcome
more
to California,
forms.
The most litigious state in this country.
That's what we need, more forms. And then John Fields wrote, what's the point in putting 3% in if you're not going to enforce it? I totally agree. If you put in 3% and you're only getting 2%, tell that buyer you're going to have to pony up the other 1%, or no bueno.
Or
not helping you.
Or you can ask the buyer to authorize you to ask the seller to pay it.
And Judy does ask, do we still use the ADM for the BRE? Mark and I have gone back and forth on that, because some of the terms would not be necessary since it's non-exclusive.
The way we did it in the past, where we had some additional terms on an addendum that, were like more specific to like new homes and that type of thing. We decided to drop those clauses.
Yeah. All right, guys, we covered a lot. I appreciate your time. I appreciate Mark for stepping in and answering stuff as well too. If you're
welcome,
are done, I want you guys to go out and make it a great day.
Robert, can you drop the link again for Bridget in the chat? Everyone else can.
What does Bridget want?
Where to watch that replay?
Oh, the RPA webinar.
The original document.
No, she wants the live. I will copy that.
You put it on Facebook too, I guess.
It's all in the documents that you emailed, but there's the live webinar.
Bridget doesn't read emails.
You can go through the BRE, the buyer broker, the new buyer broker form. You also do the RPA. I recommend doing the RPA. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. See you next week for more fun than that. Bye, guys. Thanks, BB and Mark.
Thank you.
Keeping us smart.